I'm Craig Piper. I'm the Executive Vice President for Zoos and Aquariums and Director of the Bronx Zoo for the Wildlife Conservation Society. And I also serve as Chair of the AZA Accreditation Commission.
Hi, I'm Allison Tuttle, Chief Zoological Officer at Mystic Aquarium and currently serving as Vice Chair of AZA's Accreditation Commission.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. All right, y'all, so this episode has been years in the making, and I'm so excited that it is finally here. Since the very beginning of this podcast, we have talked a lot about AZA accreditation and what that means and how it's the gold standard and all kinds of stuff. But what we haven't talked about is the insider view of how you become accredited. And so today I am sitting down with the chair and vice chair of the AZA's Accreditation Committee, and we talk about a bunch of stuff, and it's a long interview. So I'm not going to do too much of a preamble here. So make sure that you listen to the whole thing. There's lots of really cool, interesting stuff. And I want to thank everyone at the AZA for helping this get set up, and especially thank Allison for working out all the logistics, and Craig for actually driving to Mystic from Bronx just to do this interview, which was incredibly kind. So with all of that said, let's get to the interview. There's a lot to learn, y'all. Yeah, and we are here today to talk about all things accreditation. But before we do, real quick, I just have to tell you, I love both of your facilities a whole lot. I've been here multiple times, so I have family in New England, and I love to come out, and I'm excited to finally have connected with Mystic, and this is very cool. And then, I mean, as far as the Bronx, my goodness, I do so much gigging in New York City, and I spend more years than not, I'm a member there. And whenever y'all have tree kangaroo joeys, I practically move to the city. So between that and the pandas, it's a good time. So yeah, so thank you both for being here. But I think that today, I'm hoping that this episode helps in numerous ways, because for 6 years, my audience has heard me talk about accreditation and about the AZA, and they've heard me cover annual conferences and mid-year and talk about the SAFE programs and all the things. And it's always just kind of built in that accreditation is important. But we've never really talked about what accreditation looks like. And then on top of that, I have a lot of people who listen to this podcast that are in the industry. And I will tell you, I'm sure I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but when it's accreditation time, facilities get nervous, right? Yep. You want to be accredited. It's important to these people. And I've had the fun privilege of being at facilities when the accreditation teams are there, and I'm watching them walk around and ask questions. And going through it, I volunteered at Aquarium of Niagara and being there when the team came through and everything. And even places that are very confident, the nerves still kick up a little bit. It's like a job interview, right? You get a little nervous, a little excited. And so I want to demystify that so that maybe people who are going through it for the first time can listen back to this and have a little bit more of an idea of what's coming. So that's my goal with this today. Okay. And so I would love to start by asking, at the most basic, why is accreditation important?
I think accreditation is so important because it's the way that we ensure that our member institutions are providing the highest quality animal care and well-being, veterinary care, all of those things, but great habitats for the animals, but that we're also fulfilling all the other parts of our mission: education responsibilities, community service, research, science, financial stability. When you look at it, all of us tend to be, have a license from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to house and exhibit wildlife. They only look at mammals and birds.
Right.
They don't look at everything else. So the accreditation process is much broader. And it's that way that we can assure our guests and our communities that we're doing the best by the animals and that we're holding ourselves accountable to those standards.
Cool. If you have anything else you want to add, just jump on in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just say that for us, it's really a gold standard. There's so few organizations that meet all of those comprehensive standards that Craig just mentioned. And presently, there's only about 254 zoos, aquariums, and related facilities across the world, U.S., 12 countries. And that's a really small amount of the people who exhibit animals. So it really is the gold standard. It shows that you are the best at all of the things you do. And it's a process that really drives all of us forward and emphasizes continual improvement.
Yeah, which is something that I love. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
When you think about it, there are over 3,000 institutions that have USDA licenses to house and exhibit wildlife. So as Allison said, there are like 250 some that are accredited. So less than 10% of those license holders meet these standards. But the way the standards are set up, they're set up by performance standards, not engineering standards. And so they can be met by small institutions, large institutions. It doesn't really, size is not the thing that separates. It's the quality and commitment to all of the programs and standards that we have.
Right, which is super important to understand. And, obviously, we've seen there are big facilities that don't get accreditation or lose accreditation when things happen. And they're really, really tiny facilities that have been accredited forever. And it's fantastic. I think that is one of my favorite things about the AZA is that, while they definitely, it's a club, it is, you have to earn it to get there, but it's not based on size. And I do think that's pretty cool. So talk to me about what it takes for a facility. So accreditation is for 5 years. And then either you're going for your first accreditation or you're renewing your accreditation. Walk us through what does that look like? What does the facility do, and when do they interact with y'all, and how mean and scary are you to them? And I'm seeing the nice part of you guys now, but I've heard some stories. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so what is that like?
Well, the one thing to remember is all of us who serve on the Accreditation Commission, we go through accreditation too on the other side. So we fully appreciate what it's like to be the one being inspected. We do it every 5 years. At WCS, we have 5 facilities. I do it 5 times.
Are you guys on a cycle where it's like one every year and you just...
No, we have 3 on one year and 2 on another year.
Okay, so at least you get some breaks. That's good. That's good.
So, but, the way the process starts is an institution files an application. And it's all the documentation. It's a pretty extensive application process. It covers all the aspects of accreditation. And then there's a person from the Accreditation Commission who's assigned as the primary reviewer, the person to help the process for both the visiting inspection team, but also the institution that's undergoing the accreditation process to help them as well. We also then assign a team of qualified inspectors. So there's always somebody who is an animal care expert. There's always a veterinarian on the team, and then someone who has expertise in the operations and administrative, education, science, those types of things. So it's a rounded team. If an institution has elephants, they get an additional inspector with specialty with elephants. And if they have cetaceans, there's a specific inspector for that as well. So that team is built. The team and the primary reviewers, they review the application materials in preparation for doing a site visit. Allison, why don't you take it from there? Next steps.
Sure. It's actually great timing for Mystic Aquarium for that because we're actually gearing up for an accreditation inspection coming up this spring. So yeah, the process for getting your campus ready for the site inspection is really comprehensive. Accreditation is readiness every day. So things meet standards every day, but that doesn't mean you don't want to be what we call in the commission game day ready. You want to be that much more ready when it's time for your inspection. So it's time to look at your campus with sort of the white glove test, right? Make sure that everything looks its absolute best, make sure everything's presenting its best. So there's a lot of last projects that you want to get done in order to ensure the best presentation of the facility. It's a great time to look at all of your records and policies and procedures and make sure you're following them and that your records are complete. It's great. Usually they are, but it's a great way to self-audit and make sure. And then really importantly, I think it's a great opportunity to engage your staff. I tell our staff here, this is what we get to do. There can sort of be the sort of, oh, we've got to do this as you prepare for an inspection. And I'm like, this is what we get to do. And we get to do it because we're up here and we're accredited. So it's a celebration of, the quality that we put forward and our commitment to getting better over time and our commitment to the excellence for our animals and our guests and our mission. And so if we approach it with that, it's an opportunity too for team building and pride in the facility and just getting everybody aligned. So there's a staff training component that goes into it as well. And then when they come here on campus, it's the amount of time is dependent on the size of the facility. For Mystic Aquarium, it's 3 days, but for larger facilities, it could be a whole week. And they will look at everything, stem to stern, front of house, back of house. They'll talk to staff. The interviews are formal and scheduled, also informal as you walk by people, and they'll get a real sense for our culture at that time as well. And at the conclusion, we'll understand what our points of achievement are and what concerns have come up, which we'll then work to address.
When we're doing an inspection, then you talk about people being nervous about being inspected. And no matter how many times we've gone through the process, you do get nervous because you want to do well. And that's a good thing in my mind. If you're not taking it seriously, I don't think you would be nervous. But as the inspection process is one of not being a gotcha. The team will be thorough and will identify achievements that we see. We'll also identify what we call our major concerns, which are those things that this is serious enough, you need to be addressing this right away. And then there are lesser concerns they're things where you're not quite meeting the standard, but it's not so serious that you got to jump on it right away. You might have some time to be able to solve that, but you need to address those things. But a good inspection team is sharing those things they're seeing with the institution as they're going through the inspection. There are a couple reasons for that. One is you don't want anybody ever be surprised at the exit interview that here are the things we found. But also, if you can fix it before the team leaves, it goes off the list. So there's lots of conversation, and it's really not about, we found this, it's terrible. It's we're going to help you make sure you're fulfilling those standards.
Right.
So at the end of the inspection, you do prepare a document for the institution that gives them their achievements, and there's often quite a long list of those, and then those major and lesser concerns. Sometimes there's a concern that shows up from a previous inspection, and it's like, hey, we saw this last time, and it's still here. We got to address this. But then the team goes back home, and the institution then has time to respond to those concerns. So they might repair things, fix things, put new policies in place, whatever it was, and they send that information to AZA. And while they're doing that, the team is writing up their inspection reports that go to AZA as well. That's when the commission comes into play, because the commission gets the visiting team's reports. We get the response to the concerns from the institution. We weigh those together. And then at either the mid-year meeting or the annual meeting, we have a series of hearings that we hold, and we visit with each institution in person. They come and provide us with updates on even activities they've done subsequent to the written response to the concerns. There's discussion with the commissioners about where they are, and then the commission are the ones that make the decision on whether to accredit or not.
Okay. That brings up all kinds of questions. But the first thing that I need to say is just that Sarah, the Sarah Fideli from the AZA who set this interview up, and I have tried for both last annual and last mid-year to get this to happen at the conference and meeting respectively. And how dumb was that when y'all are in committee meetings all day? And I mean, it was the dumbest thing that we even tried. I'm so entertained, but thank you both for making this work, because I'm never going to get you at a meeting. I will be at annual again this year and I will not see either of your faces, I'm sure. So I just thought that was really funny. So I guess the first thing that kind of stands out to me, with all of this is, and again, I'm coming at this from this is a positive thing, right? But there are detractors to this process. Weirdly, a lot of them are people who are the owners of unaccredited zoos. Strange how that happens. But one of the series of complaints that I've seen about this is exactly what you were talking about, which is that all this means is that once every 5 years, you get your facility into shape. And I know that's not the case, right? I spend a lot of time in AZA facilities, but can you answer that detraction? Because there is a way, from what you've said, that you can interpret it that way. That we just have to clean up our crap every 5 years and impress these people for a week, or only 3 days if you're Mystic, right? You guys have to be good 3 days out of every 5 years, right? What would you say to that detraction?
Well, I would say that the goal of AZA readiness is the requirement to be AZA ready every single day. So you are not allowed to lapse, and AZA can verify that through any number of processes. Complaints can go in. If a complaint comes in, it's thoroughly and seriously investigated. If anything happens in the news, AZA is monitoring for that and will be able to respond. So the commission can take a look at any given point at the status of the facility, and we are able to send in another inspection team if we need to, or make an inquiry to the facility. Hey, we heard on the news that, please respond. And then we can consider that. And our toolbox is really limitless and with regards to what actions can be taken. If a facility is not accreditation worthy partway through its cycle, we have the ability to remove accreditation at that time. That would be something that would be very serious, and we always would want to give facilities a chance to respond and go through the process, of course, but it's not limited only to the hearing.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, accreditation is earned, and the expectation is you maintain those standards, and you can lose it at any time.
Right.
And certainly our institutions also, those in the U.S., have USDA licenses, and you get inspected then, and there's no schedule.
Mm-hmm.
They arrive at your door, and you let them in and do the inspections. So those are not unannounced. So, and some of our institutions have other state agencies that do inspections. So we're not the only ones that are looking at these things. And the Accreditation Commission doesn't just work on those inspections. As Allison was saying, there are certain things that members are expected to report to the commission. If they have a major injury or an animal escape issue or financial issues, or that they have to give us reports on those things. And then, as she said, the media is something we look at. We'll see something in the news going, okay, that's something that we need to know more about. Please give us an update. So I think, institutions really do try to stay on top of things to maintain that accreditation because they don't want to lose it.
Right. And I think it's also worth mentioning that it is such a high standard and there's so much going on that it would literally be impossible to be AZA ready for 3 days only, right? And that's just like having been at these places where we, like you said, when people get nervous, it's not because they think they're not ready or because we need to do these 100 things. You can't do that in a day or two or a week or whatever. It's just because, like you said, you want this. This is something you care about. But that would just not be a possibility. So I think that's also worth mentioning.
And I think the key is, there are certainly fine institutions that are not accredited. Mm-hmm. They might have great animal care, or they might have great education programs. I think the strength of AZA is that you need to have strength in all areas of the operations. So you've got, the quality animal care and exhibits and science and conservation and education and financial stability, strong governance, those things that are helping institutions be healthy for a long time. And I think that's an important sign for our communities that we're living up to those standards, that's an important message to the community as much as anything else.
Definitely.
And I think accreditation also underscores, the reason that why we have animals. We provide exceptional well-being, and we have animals for the purposes of education, for conservation, for scientific advancement. And, a lot of the detractors will think of zoos and aquariums as exploitative, but they're not. The animals are scientifically provided with what they need to thrive, and they're there for the purposes that advance wild conservation across the globe. So it's a really meaningful process. And to Craig's point about all the different facets, it's implementing all of those things together that really make the positive difference.
And I think that's what sets the accredited institutions apart from unaccredited is we can't justify our existence without that mission of conservation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sets AZA and some other regional associations. We're not the only one that have high standards, but in Europe, AZA is an equivalent that has strong standards, and they're growing standards elsewhere in other parts of the world. But I think it's also interesting that so many international institutions are now seeking AZA accreditation because they see it as the gold standard, and they want to operate at that level and be recognized at that level too.
Yeah, that is very cool. I think it's such a unique challenge because there's a trend on social media right now, right, where I have a large presence. And people are putting why they support zoos and aquariums, these little infographics, and they're just a couple of pictures. And I've been trying to write one. And y'all, I don't know if I will have by the time this comes out, because it's hard, because I know so much now, right? Yeah. And I was making these little slides for it yesterday, and I was writing about tags and SSPs, and I was like, oh man, I'm really in the deep end and I'm nowhere close to done here yet. It's too much when you really understand the fact that there is a scientist at Cleveland Metro Park Zoo who makes a very comfortable living, mostly studying how to get the 40-some tree kangaroos in our population to reproduce. And it's working. That's special. And that's what people are. I don't like zoos. They're, like you said, exploitative. No. It's incredible the amount of thought and the amount of energy that goes into these things. And every week on here, I feature people who are advancing that knowledge, whether it's keepers and just with their understanding of their individual animals, all the way up to those crazy scientists and advisors. And I can't even believe the people who exist in this world, I recently started talking to a conservation psychologist. Didn't know that was a thing. Now we're on a SAFE program together. That's pretty cool. It's just, there's so much that goes into it at these worlds. And I think that most of us, I'm speaking for myself, but I've heard this from a lot of people that are in the good zoo world, wish that most other facilities would be shut down. Most of us are anti-zoo and anti-aquarium, except for the good facilities, right? And because there are so many bad facilities out there, there's Tiger King, and we saw it, right? And I'm not saying that only accreditation means that you are a good facility, but I'll tell you, as somebody who travels around the country and sometimes the world, it's really nice to get into a town and be like, hey, there's a zoo here. Scroll, accredited by the AZA. All right, I'm going. Hey, there's a zoo here. Bob's Zoo of Animal Petting. Is that a tiger cub on a lap? Okay, let's not, yep. And early on, I didn't know any of this stuff. And I'm so fortunate that I grew up in an area with AZA accredited zoos, that as I started touring and going to places, the first kind of places that I figured out that I could go and tour and see the zoos were like Toledo, Toronto. I got lucky, y'all, because I don't know if I would have ever gone down this road if I went to some of the facilities. Because, again, not knowing early on, I went to some facilities, y'all. I've seen some stuff. Little bears in cages, breaking my heart, making me sad.
there's one facility, I'm not going to name the name, but my wife and I were there, and we were legitimately like trying to figure out how to kidnap the binturong to get it to another facility because it was living in abject squalor. And like, would we actually do that? No, there are legal ramifications. But we were both sitting there with tears in our eyes trying to figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
So I do think that is a really nice thing that accreditation, provides.
And there's certainly, we don't want organizations to exist that don't provide good animal care. That's key. But we do want to take the approach of let's help improve those. So one of the things that AZA has done is created a Pathways Toward Accreditation program. For years, we've done informal mentoring for institutions that are not currently accredited that would like to be. And we realized there's much more of a need of a formal program. So people can actually join, institutions can join that program. They get official mentors. They get help along the way. And it doesn't guarantee accreditation by any means, but the approach is, how can we get you ready to at least apply for that process within 5 years? And hopefully you will attain it. And we have people who've come through that Pathways program that are now accredited. So that's a way we're trying to say, how do we elevate the profession and help institutions who want to succeed and want to thrive as accredited members, and so try to grow that. So it's not meant to be an exclusive group. It's meant to be an inclusive group if you can meet the standards.
That is a great point. And I love Pathways, by the way. I've had a few Pathways dues on. Originally, I was like, you have to be accredited. But then when I learned about the process, I was like, okay, this is really cool. Let's show what you're doing. Now, you mentioned that the commission has a lot of, they have the final say, right? It's a decision. And I'm sure that it's not always 100% cut and dry, because animal stuff is tricky, right?
Yep.
And so how much leniency will you have in, or can you explain specific instances? I can think right now of one great example, and I don't know when their accreditation is up, but I was at Buttonwood Park Zoo yesterday. And I was hanging out with my friend Emily the elephant. And I have played drums with Emily the elephant, right? Most magical experience of my life. And Buttonwood is an incredible facility. They absolutely are. They have one elephant right now. And there's a reason for that, right? Emily, we've talked a lot about this on the podcast, and they have talked about this. And I've spoken to elephant experts outside. So this is all stuff I'm okay to talk about here, Emily is an elephant that prefers to be alone. Actually, since Ruth, the other elephant there, passed, she's showing better cortisol levels and other health things where she's thriving now that she's alone. It's actually really great to see her doing even better now that she's alone. However, I know that is not an accreditation standard, right? One elephant is not enough because generally they are social animals. So if Buttonwood comes up again, and they have stated publicly, they're moving on from elephants. So they're going to give Emily this life. Experts have come in and said she would fail to thrive moving to a sanctuary. She needs to stay there and live out her life, right? Does that mean that you're going to yank accreditation from them because they have one elephant or that they absolutely can't get it? Or are you able to look at that situation and say, cool, everything else was good, we get it?
So we have a lot of tools in our toolkit, as we were saying earlier. And so when an organization comes up for accreditation, the first thing is the commission has 3 primary choices. We can either accredit, congratulations, you're accredited for 5 years. We can deny, that says you're just not meeting the standards and you aren't going to be able to address them in a short amount of time. And in between, we can grant provisional accreditation. It says, we're seeing significant concerns, but we feel you can address those in a year. And we're going to give you an opportunity to do that. So they maintain accreditation for that year, but at the end of that year, another inspection team goes in and the whole process is repeated. Then they come back for a hearing, and then it's either an up or down vote. You're either accredited or you're denied. You can't go provisional again. Where we often deny an institution is really when we see there's significant things they can't address in a year. They need more time. So it's best for them to lose the accreditation and focus on trying to address the things they need to then come back and attain it later. In the case of the elephants you're talking about, we do have processes for organizations to apply for a waiver or a variance from a specific standards. And we've had provisions specifically with elephants because we've made so many changes in those standards over the years and recognize that, well, yeah, as a species, elephants are social, but just like humans, we're all individuals and we're all a little bit different on how we behave, introverts, extroverts, whatever. And so we recognize as zoos, we're caring for species and individuals. So we will assess, where is that individual elephant and is that a right thing? And in fact, every elephant holding institution does an annual report. And all of those reports are provided to the commission with a very thorough analysis. Are they fully meeting the standards? Are they meeting some of the standards and what needs to be addressed? And are they just failing to meet those standards? So that's a process that goes on each and every year.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I like that you can, I think that's important because that does allow for a situation like that. Because yeah, on the whole, I don't want to see a zoo with one elephant. On the other hand, I will always love on Buttonwood Park Zoo and how they take care of Emily.
And if you have
it's
an
such a
animal,
great example.
and not just an elephant, if you have social species like social primates that are being held individually, institution has to have a plan on what are they doing in terms of enrichment for that species.
Right.
And a visiting team, when they're doing an inspection, will very thoroughly look at welfare assessments for those individual animals, because that's a real indicator on how's that individual doing.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. I'm curious about, I know, one of the other things that gets talked about in maybe a negative light about this is the cost of accreditation. Y'all ain't cheap. Just what I have heard about just how much caviar it takes to get the team to a facility is just ridiculous. No, I'm kidding. But I am curious, why is there such a cost to be a part of the AZA? And is that a positive? Is that something that there are negative aspects of? What do you guys think about that?
Well, AZA provides so many services to its members, and in order to do that, AZA has a large team of very qualified professionals as well. So all the programs ranging from accreditation like we're talking about to the conservation programs that you mentioned earlier, and then some, all of that costs money to implement, and it costs money to administer a high quality program, right? So, relative to what you get for AZA accreditation, I don't know that I'd personally think of it as expensive, even though it is an expense to go through the process. But it's a worthwhile expense, in my opinion, given the outcome and what accreditation means and symbolizes for the facility. And as such, it's an expense to send staff to the annual and mid-year conferences. But at the same time, it's a professional development opportunity for staff. They're going to grow and engage with others in the field in a way that's just not possible without this organization. So again, it's an expense, but it's a worthwhile expense.
And it's interesting when you think the actual costs of doing the accreditation process are less than the annual membership dues are for an institution. And the membership dues are an important part of supporting the entire collaborative work of the association. So you have the professional AZA staff that support all the activities and things. On the accreditation side, we have a professional AZA staff of 4 people who are dedicated full-time to accreditation. So the fees that you pay for an accreditation application cover expenses for the visiting team who are volunteering their time to go do that inspection and to support the activities of the staff to manage the entire program. So to me, I think the cost of the accreditation process is a bargain, because I'm getting so much expertise from colleagues who are coming and doing the inspections and helping us maybe see something that we weren't seeing. And it's like you at home, you get so used to the furniture, the way it's arranged, you don't necessarily notice that something oh, that's broken, it needs to be replaced, or I kind of live with it or whatever. So fresh sets of eyes can help you see things you've become a little bit, immune to.
Sure.
And so I think it's a bargain to be able to have 3-4 professional colleagues who are trained inspectors come and give us feedback and thoughts. So it's like a bargain for consulting in that way.
That's
and I
fair.
think the investment in the community is so important, because what's it mean to be AZA accredited? Well, it's a stamp of approval, but it also means you're going to be part of the collective effort to conserve wildlife around the world. And, that's where, you think about it right now, AZA institutions are investing. You were talking about all the great programs that we're doing in our parks in terms of breeding and and scientific work. But we're also investing $250 million a year in field conservation collectively, $1 billion every 5 years coming from AZA institutions. I want to be part of that community.
Yeah.
And I just want to follow up. Craig mentioned the AZA staff, and the staff that we work with in the accreditation realm are just phenomenal, and they work really hard each and every day, and they're extremely dedicated to the members and to the process and to doing the right thing. And that's true for all AZA departments, of course. We work really closely with those accreditation team members. So I just wanted to take the opportunity here to give them a shout out on the podcast.
Nice. I love that. So, as you mentioned, accreditation standards change. And that can get tricky. And there have been a few moments, like I know when elephants went protected contact, Pittsburgh was like, we don't think that's the best for us. We're going to politely step aside. And they're back in the fold now, and all is well. And it's lovely. But I think first of all, I think it's kind of cool that like you can just do that. Like, it's not like the zoo goes away if you disagree. You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. We're not doing AZA right now. We disagree on something, cool. But when those standards change, how does that decision get made? And what does that, like, how long do institutions have to implement those changes and stuff like that?
So standards need to change because the profession is advancing and changing, and we're learning more new things all the time, and that leads to improvements and enhancements in standards. So the process can vary. So the commission is a key element. In a number of cases, we will see that there's a standard that needs to be changed, and so we'll propose adjustments to that. But other AZA committees will often say, hey, we have some suggestions for some standards. In the case of the elephant standards, when they went through revision, we had a task force created of elephant care professionals and others in the community to look at them very thoroughly. A few years ago, we felt, some of the veterinary standards are a little out of date because we coordinate those with other things like AVMA and Zoo Vets Association. And so we had a group of veterinarians that took a deep dive over, many months to take a look and make recommendations. All of those come to the commission. We weigh those. And we serve as kind of the leveling body, because a lot of times someone will suggest something that seems really logical as a standard, but you realize, well, it's not easy to apply that to small institutions, large institutions, aquariums, zoos. So we have to think that broader picture. Then we might come up with proposed revisions. The commission will vote to accept those, but then it does go to the AZA Board of Directors. So the AZA board votes on any changes in standards as well. So that's another set of eyes on it before it becomes implemented. And then when you ask the question of how long does it take? In some cases, the standard is pretty straightforward and we'll expect everybody to be following it the next year. In other cases, we know it's going to take some time. I think one of the most recent cases when we created the current standard for animal welfare assessments, people had to develop. It was things we were doing every day, really, in our animal care, but we weren't documenting it fully. And we weren't making it we were doing more reactive kind of assessments instead of proactive. Let's really look at welfare on a regular basis and use it to inform decisions we make about animal care and facilities, exhibits, and things. And so we knew that people were going to have to develop whole programs. In that case, we said it's probably going to be like a 3-year process for everybody to phase in. So when institutions came to us the first year, they demonstrated, here's how we're beginning to approach it. By the second year, we wanted to see, yeah, we've got something that we're testing and we're doing some assessments. By year 3, we were kind of like, you should have something well underway.
Right.
And now it's just, you should be doing it for every animal every year. You should be able to show us that. You can show us event-based assessments and all aspects of the program. So in some cases like that, it takes time to phase it in.
That makes sense. Very cool. And then I know that one of the things that surprised me about this was I didn't realize how thorough accreditation is on all aspects, like with the application, until the first time a facility reached out to me and was like, hey, we just put together our reaccreditation packet and your episodes are in there for our like PR side of things. And I was like, I didn't know they looked like media. That's cool. And I've now found that, a lot of facilities will include these episodes in there. How far does this go? Because I haven't read the accreditation standards. I was actually sent them, and it's so much, so many words that I thought I would just ask y'all. But I would have never guessed that my podcast would be a part of that, and that's really cool. And so how all-reaching is this?
It's all-reaching to every aspect of the organization. We tell our team here that every individual is contributing to the success for accreditation. It's the governing authority. It's the staff, it's the volunteers. And then amongst the staff, it's of course your animal care staff, but it's your finance staff, it's your research team, it's your education and conservation team, it's the facilities team that drives the work to support the physical facility. It's your safety and security teams that provide that aspect. It's your guest services team that engage your guests. So it's really comprehensive, and you have to provide enough information really that gives the commission and the inspection teams a full picture of how your organization operates and how you go from point A to point B, how you execute your conservation, how you care for your animals, how you fund caring for your animals, how you're going to exist into the future, how you care for your facility in a proactive way. We use the proactive word quite a lot. What your strategic plan is, what your master plan is, how we ensure your growth into the future. It's many, many questions, extremely comprehensive, and it's a process that really works for a thorough vetting.
That's awesome. And one of the things that you brought up is that, when things are brought to your attention, you will check it out. And I had a really interesting experience with this myself. And again, I have permission from the facility to talk about this. So Reptiland is a small reptile-based zoo in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And I happen to drive past them when I'm traveling to see my son. So I'm there a lot. I know them. I like them. I am friends with the
corridor.
Team. Yes.
I travel it well too.
Nice. And I am friends with Clyde and the other Peelings. I've spent so much time there. Great place, right? And I got, and this is one of my favorite stories. A stuffed animal messaged me on Instagram because I guess they decided that they wanted to be anonymous. So they created a page and it was a stuffed animal's picture and face. And they were like, hey, have you ever heard of this roadside zoo called Reptiland? And I was like, I've heard of a zoo called Reptiland, and it is technically on the side of a road, but I know that's not what you mean. But no, they're great. I've been there, whatever. And they came out and they said all kinds of negative stuff and stuff that would not get, that would lose them accreditation that was happening behind the scenes. And I was like, no, but also I'm going to be driving by in like a week. So I reached out to some connections there and I was like, hey, being real upfront with you, this person said all of this stuff. This stuffed animal said all of this stuff, which just made it so much funnier to all of us. And they were like, come, you've already been behind the scenes at a lot of this stuff, but we'll show you that we'll actively show you these things. And they did that for me just to be nice, right? They didn't have to do that. I'm nobody. You can't be Rossifari accredited, and, but they did. And then they were telling me that y'all did the same thing, that some, this complaint came in And it ended up being a former bitter employee, bad separation, whatever, not going down that road. But complete BS. But they were like, oh yeah, no, we're doing this for the AZA. Might as well do it for you as well. And they were totally happy to do it. Like they were, this is great. Actually, this proves our innocence before this person tries to make a bigger deal. But I'm curious, maybe how often that kind of thing happens, and how seriously does something have to appear? How serious does something have to appear before you're going to send people out and that kind of thing?
So AZA will receive complaints from employees. Now we encourage employees to use their own processes, because one of our standards is that employees all have to have the ability to be able to raise concerns in their own institution, and for those to be thoroughly explored and assessed and decisions made without any repercussions for the employee if they brought the concerns in good faith. So we'll often say, have you done that process? But any concern that AZA receives from a staff member, a volunteer, a member of the public, because the public will reach out, we do follow up with an investigation. So we ask for detailed information from the person making the complaint. And then we also ask the institution, hey, have we received a complaint about such and such? We'd like your input on that. The commission has regular monthly meetings where we take up various reports. And these are some of those reports that we'll take a look at them. And in some cases, we get a clear understanding of what's going on. In other cases, we say, okay, this is going to take more investigation. So it could be more interviews with people remotely to gather information, or in some significant cases, it does cause us to send a team out to do a targeted inspection to really assess those issues, especially if safety or animal welfare is a concern. Those are the ones we really are very careful with. But the whole idea is a fair and balanced but thorough assessment of the issue, and to determine if any action needs to be taken. So.
Yeah. Makes sense. When it comes to accreditation standards changing and all of that, what is the end game? What's the goal? Like, it's always to get better, but is there ever a concern that we're just gonna run everybody off, and that you're gonna need to make $1 billion a year to be the only AZA accredited zoo? Like, is there too much almost?
Well, I think the spirit of AZA accreditation really is the constant elevation and achieving more and having a greater impact. So as we elevate the standards, we're also elevating the impact. And I think that's aligned with organizational growth. And that's aligned with what organizations wish to do, both their staff as well as, their mission programs. So, and our standards are not prescriptive, as Craig mentioned earlier. So they're achievable, and organizations have the flexibility to meet that standard in whatever way works for their budget or their staffing or their region. And that really allows the standards to be implemented in a way that's not over-regulatory. It's flexible enough that really anyone can meet them, whether you're a small zoo with a small budget or a very, well-funded large facility.
We only have one engineering standard in the whole set of standards, and it's the height of a perimeter fence, requirement of 8 feet minimum for a perimeter fence. Now, there are other ways of achieving that with a building or things like that.
Sure.
But all the others are performance-based.
Interesting. Okay.
And the whole idea is because we want the institutions to decide what's right for them. So an institution that has a $400 million budget versus one that has a $500,000 budget can still do conservation. They're going to do it very differently, and it's up to them to decide where they want to put that emphasis. Is it local? Is it global? Whatever. We just say, we're mission-based organizations that have conservation as a top goal. You should be doing something with conservation. Tell us what you're doing. And it's really, what's the process you use to develop what you're going to do? And we see some really wonderful, creative programs that cost very little.
Mm-hmm.
we're not asking institutions to necessarily spend more, but to do impactful work, as Allison said. And I think so. The whole idea is it's giving institutions the way to find what they want to be and where they want to position themselves in the community, but meet all these same standards that any other institution meets.
That makes sense. Have you ever, or are there any, because I'm assuming not from what you said, but maybe, thought about standards that are based on collection size or finances or something like that? Or is it all universal?
Yeah, collection size, we ask people what they do in terms of their institutional collection planning process. And we expect there to be a formal program to assess. But there's nothing that says, an institution can say, I'm going to focus on 3 species and I'm going to be the world's most impactful leader in conservation of that species. They could still be accredited if that's really what their mission is. And so we don't say you've got to have a certain collection size or a specific species. We want members to participate fully in SSP and SAFE programs that are appropriate for them, but we want them to make the decisions of where's it match with their goals and their mission. So we want that flexibility. And in terms of budget, we're looking at, do they have the processes in place to be financially stable and to be able to have growth in the future to sustain what they're doing? Because if they don't have financial stability, it's going to show up in all those other areas. Their maintenance is going to fall apart. Their programs are going to fall apart. Governance won't be as good. So you start to see other problems develop when the finances are in poor shape.
Makes sense. And then one thing that I hear occasionally is anytime anything bad happens, it's like, oh, where's the AZA? Why aren't they responding immediately to this, right? It happened recently with Capron Park Zoo, right up here in Mass, where the governor was like, haha, or the mayor, I guess, was like, haha, not going to be a zoo anymore. And then people came out and argued against it. And now they're like, JK, we're going to be a zoo. And, there were some leadership issues, Henry Vilas Zoo, San Francisco Zoo, Columbus Zoo. Now, Columbus happened right around accreditation, and they actually did lose their accreditation because of that. But whenever I see any of those conversations come up, it seems that within 5 minutes of the drop, people are like, where's the AZA's statement? How are they still accredited? And it seems to me like y'all have a slow approach, especially with those kinds of things, right? Not to say that you're not investigating, but especially when it's not an animal welfare thing, right? What is the positive of that approach?
I would say the approach is not slow, it's steady.
Okay.
Because in all the cases that you mentioned, AZA accreditation staff was in communication with those institutions immediately to say, can you tell us what's going on? Can you help us understand what your thinking is? And then that information is being shared with the commission, because our view is we're taking a look at that. We all have an oath of confidentiality to the information that we're seeing and reviewing. And we will work with an institution that understands what's going on first before taking any action, because you don't want to just prematurely take action and be incorrect in that. So we want to be thoughtful and deliberative, but I can assure you AZA staff is in communication with those institutions very rapidly.
Cool. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
And I like the confidentiality side of it because you need to, you can't be blathering to the press about everything instantly. That's just never a good idea. I struggle with that a lot. I do a Zoo News episode every week. And as these things happen, I talk about them, but I always try and be both honest about what's coming out and also but we don't know both sides of the story yet. Let's, sometimes we'll cover things 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row as things come out. And I think I do think that's important to be able to do that.
Yeah, and there are things that do trigger official AZA activity. So like if there's change in ownership of an organization, it has to go through an accreditation process with that new owner. Certainly with Capron Park, it's help us understand what your thinking is, what's going on. They were very open with the community, what the mayor was thinking about,
Yeah.
and the community was very open back with this is something we want. And that's really, it's up to that community to decide, but AZA is monitoring. And, there are things that could trigger us to say, okay, we need accreditation to take a deeper look at this.
Makes sense. What would you say, and this is going to be the last main question here, what would you say to people when they disagree with one of your decisions? And I will tell you right now, I was one of them. Love y'all. Love the work you do. Support the AZA all the time. When Columbus was denied accreditation over that financial situation, when that leadership was already gone, I disagreed so strongly, I made an entire bonus episode about it. And it was probably what kind of launched me to bigger popularity in this world. It was my most downloaded episode for quite a while. Now, I'm not here to litigate that. I would never ask you to do that, of course. Agree to disagree and move on. But what would you say in general to people who are like, oh, I think that's bull that this zoo got it or didn't get it or whatever?
Well, I would say that the process does not rely on somebody's opinion. It's not my opinion or Craig's opinion or AZA's opinion about stuff. The process of whether a facility is accredited or not accredited is solely based on standards. And so it's a balance of where are they with alignment with the standards, and that's what dictates the outcome. So if a facility is not meeting standards and not likely to be able to meet standards with corrective action in a reasonable period of time, a year, for example, for provisional accreditation, there's no choice for the commission but to deny. And the commission's never excited about denying accreditation. As Craig mentioned, it's a very inclusive process. We want to see facilities be successful, and we want to see our peers be successful. But the value of the AZA accreditation process lies in those hard decisions that if you aren't meeting the standards at the level that you need to, and you can't be provisionally accredited because you cannot change that outcome within a year's span of time, there is no other option.
And I would hope people would also understand, sometimes they're very difficult decisions for the commission. We wrestle with those a lot in some of the decisions. Some are easy, some are not. But I hope people would understand that when the commission is making the decision, as Allison said, it's based on the standards. So, and I think it's a good thing to show that even a highly well-known, highly popular institution like Columbus went through that, they came back stronger. They came back very solidly and achieved the accreditation. So it's never easy for them. It's not easy for the commission, but I think it speaks to the process is valid when it, because sometimes people would say, criticize it's only the small institutions that lose accreditation. No, it's not.
Right.
I mean, there are some large, significant institutions that have because they failed to meet a standard. And there are many, many small institutions that have never, lost accreditation because they've always met those standards. So I think it speaks to the value of the process that, sometimes that we are holding each other accountable. But in almost every case where an organization has lost accreditation, when they can't come back, they've said, thank you, that's what we needed. We needed that kick in the pants that said we're not meeting those standards. So, they aren't always easy decisions for us very much, because they're also colleagues that we know and value.
Sure.
But we all have to meet those standards.
Fair enough. All right. That's really it for the accreditation side of things. I do have two questions that I always wrap up with. Is there a conservation organization you'd each like to give a shout out to?
Well, I'm proud to be part of one of those organizations. The Wildlife Conservation Society is such a unique organization. People in New York know us for the 4 zoos in the aquarium, the Bronx Zoo, Central Park, Prospect, Queens Zoo, and the New York Aquarium. What many of them don't realize is that we've got more staff outside the United States than we do in New York. We're active in more than 50 countries of the world. Our big, hairy, audacious goal is to save 50% of the planet's biodiversity. You talk about the amazing people that you meet when you're in zoos and aquariums. I have that kind of experience every day where I may know the work that someone's doing in one of our facilities or one of our countries, but then I'll see a story coming from our communications people. I had no idea we're doing that. That is so cool. So what I love most about this profession is, and I've been doing it for 40 years plus, is that I learn something new every day, and there's so much more we don't know than we do know. I'm just so pleased to be part of a community that does this work collectively and collaboratively, but I'm really proud of the work of the Wildlife Conservation Society.
Awesome.
And like Craig, I admire all AZA members and the conservation work that they do, but I'm particularly fond of Mystic Aquarium's animal rescue program. We're the sole response to endangered sea turtles or marine mammals that strand along the coast of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Fishers Island, New York. That's 1,000 miles of coastline that we steward. And we do that by rescuing and rehabilitating and re-releasing animals back to the wild. That's only, however, a small facet of our program. The rest of our program is engaged with environmental stewardship, teaching people how to share the coastline and how to be really good coastal environmental stewards. We have really strong programs about marine debris and plastic pollution, and leverage a huge team of first responder volunteers to help us keep our coastlines clean. And we do really critical research to understand the health of these animals. They're our window to the environment. So the picture of that together really provides a big impact for marine mammals and sea turtles here in this region. And I'm really proud of that as well.
Very cool.
And one that we share, I'd say, is, because a lot of times we look at conservation we're doing at great distances, but some close to home are so important. But in the New York Bight, which is New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, there's a very special habitat called the Hudson Canyon. It's 90 miles off the New York Harbor, and it's larger than the Grand Canyon in terms of scale. And it's a critical habitat for hundreds of species, marine species, that are in our waters here. And we've all been working collectively to try to get that declared a national marine sanctuary. It's an important, unique location right here on the East Coast of the United States that we want to help protect. And that's something that Mystic and Maritime Aquarium and New York Aquarium and a number of other organizations are all part of that effort.
Very cool. I love that.
It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
I'm not going to do a poop story. I'm going to do a story about mayo.
Oh, okay. All right. You have my attention.
I thought about this, and when the Deepwater Horizon oil spill happened, I was one of the first teams of people that was deployed to the Gulf to help sea turtles. And there were a number of others. It wasn't just me. But the sea turtles were coming in droves. You could barely even see them on the water. The water was thickly coated, but there were people whose eyes were trained specifically, and they'd go out and net these animals. And people think of oil as shiny and clear and all of that, but these animals looked like they were dipped in milk chocolate. That's kind of the appearance of these animals as they were coming in. Very sad, because coated with that toxic oil on the outside as well as the inside. And us as veterinarians, you grab your Dawn and you start scrubbing away, and it became really clear very quickly, this isn't going to work. So oil likes oil. And before you know it, we're dressed in our hazmat suits in the 98-degree Louisiana heat, with these vats of mayonnaise bigger than my body.
Oh, no.
And we're covering these sea turtles with mayonnaise, both outside to pull off the oil and tubing them with mayonnaise to clear it throughout their GI tracts as a very delicate means of doing so. And it was very successful. But I'll tell you, to this day, being out in the Louisiana sun, covered with mayonnaise, it took me a long time to want to put mayonnaise on a sandwich after that.
I believe that. Whoa, that's crazy, though. Also, I'm wildly obsessed with sea turtles. They were my first animal love. So while red pandas and tree kangaroos, like we've talked about, have come a long way, sea turtles bring me more peace than anything in the world.
It's great to see an aquatic species represented.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Nothing Rossifari would have happened if not for sea turtles. Like 100%.
So my story is a poop story.
Perfect.
It goes back early in my career. I was working at Zoo Atlanta. And one of the things that we were looking to do was we were trying to convince political leaders to declare the gopher tortoise the state reptile. And I was visiting the mayor of Atlanta, who at that time in the 1980s was Andrew Young. Very famous, became ambassador to the United Nations. He was a confidant of Martin Luther King Jr., someone I really admired. And he was such a wonderful person. And so we went to City Hall as part of an event to try to encourage state legislators to support the gopher tortoise. Well, gopher tortoises share their burrows with other species. And one of them is one of my favorite snakes in the world, eastern indigo snakes. So I had an eastern indigo snake with me and a gopher tortoise, and we're telling the story of, these species, they're endangered, and why we would like to support their efforts. And as I'm holding this indigo snake, it decides to defecate explosively all over the mayor's office, all over me, and on some of Andrew Young.
Oh, no.
I was mortified, young in my career, thinking, oh gosh, this is going to ruin everything. He was so gracious and so nice. And he said, well, you never know what animals are going to do. And it was smelly and messy. We cleaned it all up. He helped me clean it up. And it was not an easy cleanup. And I just remember seeing, wiping his desk and things like that. But we did in the end. In 1989, the gopher tortoise was named the state reptile with his help and help from state legislators. But that was my story of, oh my gosh, a snake is going to spray the mayor of Atlanta.
Nice. That's amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this. This has been a blast.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right. Well, there it is. I really hope that gave you a good insight into what goes on with accreditation and how it works. And hopefully, if you're in the industry and you have accreditation coming up, that helped you feel a little less scared. Before we get going, I do want to take a moment to remind y'all to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of these types of interviews or my Friday Zoo News episodes. Make sure you're following along on the socials at Rossifari, at Rossifari Pod on the TikTok machine. And of course, you can support the podcast for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari, as have all of my patrons, who I want to say thank you to, especially my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Shank, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, Kevin Williams, and Cormac McMuffin. Meow. We'll be back on Friday for Zoo News, and until then, remember, friends, the words accreditation credits backwards are Steiderk Neutated Urka. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.